Your dungeon master has placed you in a dreadfully precarious position.
Dungeon master and dwarven sword master, hobgoblins, dwarves, elves, and halflings are some of the characters and terms used in this very complicated and controversial game.
You're playing the most phenomenal game ever created.
What's up, everyone? Welcome. Another week, another Natural Ones. Looks like our guest couldn't make it today, unfortunately, so I'm going to try and reschedule him for next week. It's going to be the Dungeon Deacon or Deacon Dungeon. I'm sorry, bro, if I butchered your name. I forget the order, but I think it's Dungeon Deacon. He wanted to come on and talk about the Underworld and cosmology and resurrect that whole dispute that we've had with people in the past, but didn't seem like it worked out today. So we'll probably have to reschedule it for next week. But I think it'll be a good stream. But how are you doing, Vic? I'm glad you're here.
Not too bad. Got a little bit of a headache because, like I said before the stream, I'm adjusting to new glasses. So the prescription is bothering me a little bit, but hopefully I'll get used to it soon.
TB is on the wrong side of the screen. What does that mean?
Well, you're the host, so you should technically be on the left, I think he means.
Oh, is that how it works?
Like you are politically.
Oh, there. I moved myself. Is that better?
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of I think it's just because Vic was in first, so it just
basically. Yeah.
Right. So, but yeah, we'll unfortunately, the guests couldn't make it, so kind of just going to be a whatever episode today. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to talk about. Although you know, I do want to cover some things first. So apparently, I've made Griff very upset, Vic.
Yeah,
again. I've made Griffith Morgan the third. Is it the third or the second? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know which version. Of Griff
no, actually, I was going to make a joke, but never mind.
I made him upset because I was able to send some stuff to Mr. Wesley, and I loved the way that I'm going to actually share my screen here of this here, just to show what's going on here. So here it is on X. You know, I was able to figure out where Wesley is at because he publicly posted it on some blogs. I like to read blogs and I like to find these sorts of things, and he publicly posted his information. And so I was like, you know what? I want to send him a letter thanking him for everything he's done and some books. I knew it would make Griff upset because he wants to act like the gatekeeper to Mr. Wesley. But if Griff is the gatekeeper, are you the keymaster? No, I'm just a guy.
No, that would imply that you have to sleep with him.
Oh, no, thank you. So yeah, I sent him 4 of my books, and I just wrote him a little handwritten letter thanking him for what he's done in the hobby. Talking about Bronsteins and how awesome they are. Griff made it sound like I asked Mr. Wesley to read all 4 of my books and to get back to me.
Yeah.
And that's not what my letter said. You can kind of see some of it here where I said, Dear Mr. Wesley, my name is John Torres, and I'm a fan of your work and legacy. I wanted to write to you and send you some of my own games that I've made. I'm a one-man show. I write, illustrate, and do the layout all on my own under the name The Basic Expert. I hope you are enjoying. Hope you enjoy flipping through my creations. I wouldn't be able to do this without your Bronstein games. These books of mine exist because of you, and I think I said your work and legacy. And then I went on to just kind of continue to thank him and whatnot. So it's just it's funny to me how upset he got, because he made it sound like I sent 4 books, and then
Demanded reviews, basically.
Yeah, like I wanted for some reason I wanted him to read all of the books and get back to me. It's like, no, they were just gifts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you, Mercurius. You're always giving people memberships. Which I am trying to improve the memberships here. I was talking to Vic before the show. I'm going to start doing like a fortnight sort of thing of like a 1-page supplement or a dungeon map or something like that once every 2 weeks. And on top of that, obviously, there's the quarterly zine for the $3 and up people. And for the $5 and up, if they support there, whenever I release something new, you get the PDF for free. So, but so thank you for that. But yeah, this is all I did. And I wasn't trying to harass him. He doesn't have to. I gave him my contact information, but he doesn't have to contact me if he doesn't want to. If Mr. Wesley's of the same mind as Griff, and Griff is actually speaking for him, then more power to him. But it's just sort of fishy to me that this sort of gatekeeping is going on, and trying to paint people that are able to contact him as like stalking him or with malicious or nefarious sort of intention. I think is very disingenuous, I think.
Well, you had that one loser accusing you of being a stalker, so yeah. But that guy's an obvious sock puppet of somebody that hates you and me.
Of course.
Everyone.
Of course. I have that account blocked, which is funny.
Yeah,
he accused me of stalking, but somehow he was still stalking my feed on X. So I guess who's stalking
and only ever pipes up to complain about us. So yeah. But he also Griff also complained about people sending emails to Wesley asking for interviews. It's like, yeah, you interviewed him. Why can't anyone else?
No, but you have to go through Griff to ask to interview Wesley.
But then Griff also he also claim that he wasn't talking about you, and you're like, well, you mentioned somebody sent 4 books. I sent 4 books. Like, who else could it be? Who else in this last 2 weeks sent exactly 4 books to Wesley?
Yeah, he tried to do this like effeminate fake posting thing. Like, I wasn't talking about you. Yes, you were. You were.
Yeah.
I sent 4 books. You specifically said in your tweet, Griff, that someone had sent him 4 books. You gave the number. That's the thing with vague posting is you should have just not given the specific number, because then I knew you were in fact talking about my package that had arrived at his place. So, but it kind of harkens back. Like I think that's cool. Like people send me stuff all the time. Actually, I got Coriolis, the Third Horizon book by Free League Press. Like one day it just appeared on my doorstep. And I was like, what the heck is this? Why is there an Amazon package on my doorstep? And turns out it was the lovely DM James who thought he would just send me a book because he thought I'd like it. And, I was like, thank you, DM James. I wasn't upset or angry. Because I don't know. I don't live in fear, I guess, of these sorts of things. But
I've been sent stuff, and imagine how many letters and gifts and stuff Gary Gygax got in his lifetime. Like, come on.
Yeah, it's cool. I think it's neat when someone wants to send me stuff or sends me something, either via email or whatever, I think that's super cool. I think that's how the hobby used to be. You used to have like pen pals, and you used to send each other stuff and whatnot. So,
but also if he didn't like you sending him the package, maybe send a letter back and be like, hey, don't do this again. Don't go through this cranky asshole on Twitter.
Well, thank you, Beardy Ben. I think I don't know what happened, but thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think it's kind of silly at this point to be this upset about it. I'm at least glad that I've noticed that both the Dave Con guy, I think his name is Victor as well, unfortunately for you.
With a C, which is the inferior spelling.
But I think I'm glad to see both Griff and him kind of lay back on this IP theft thing.
Yeah.
Like talking about running D&D or Bronsteins, or it just sets a dangerous precedent. So I'm glad to see things
Well, I think it's mostly because they got soundly trashed in that argument. I don't think there were many people that were on their side. Maybe a few weirdos, but for the most part, like everyone was like, "Yeah, no, this like makes no sense."
It's very normal for stalker serial harassers to send 4 books. Yes.
Yeah.
And to just say, like, if you want to contact me, you can. If you don't, then don't. No strings attached. Here's a gift. So, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I'm glad lately. I've been trying to get to for the supporters on the Gilded server. Been trying to get my white box game back up and running. It's been a few weeks. I'll put the link to it in the chat here if people are interested in reading the last play report. It was pretty fun. What happened? Likely Arrow and Crafty Matt had played, and oh man, it's being ridiculous. Here is in the chat here. If people want to read it, it was a lot of fun trying to get it back. So the last few sessions, it's been interesting. I've been, experimenting with the alternative combat system in chainmail and chainmailisms together, because to me, it's like the D20 is sort of iconic to D&D. That's partly why I went that route for Lightbox over it. Like, people think of D&D, they think of at least the D20 for attack rolls, whereas using man-to-man tables and D6 dice pool is just it's a little too, I think, alien for people. I think it's interesting, obviously, from a historical standpoint, and I've ran solo games and whatnot and experiments with that way. But to me, I don't have anything really personally against the D20, but yeah. So I've been in the last session before this one. These orcs had taken over a village, and the players helped the Patriarch of Zidon, which is a city to the north, kind of retake it, because the orcs went in and slaughtered everyone. And these are not the Mexican WotC orcs. These are the bad kind.
Yeah.
So after this, the orcs raiders sort of split up, and the party sort of went off and went after one of the raiding parties, and they're sort of heading north, and the party sort of realized that these orcs were heading towards somewhere in the mountains. They know that there's a blue dragon lair because they've seen this blue dragon. They've had multiple random encounters where the same blue dragon has been seen flying over the desert in this area. And so the players went and searched for where this was going, found lots of areas of the desert that looked like they'd been struck by lightning, and old ruins had been struck by lightning. Very concentrated bursts of electricity and stuff like that on stone and burned trees and shrubs, and like an old like, looks like it's like a century-old city that was destroyed, or the ruins of it, not much left in the desert. So it was a good time. They fought some lizard men cultists, so that's always fun. I love lizard men. I love using lizard men. There's just something about them that's very pulpy to me. Yeah. So I love using those kind of characters. They stumbled across a village, and the village usually is the village is under the rule of the blue dragon, and they always give like a young, attractive virgin to the dragon for him to eat, probably. And so the party saw that this was going on. They're hiding behind a dune, and they kind of ambushed the lizardmen cultists that worship the dragon and slaughtered them. Sleep spell, boom, put them all to sleep, start cutting their throats. And they awoke the girl, and she was like traumatized because she's saying, oh no, my village is doomed now, because if I don't make it to the dragon, if the offering doesn't make it to him, then everyone in my village is going to die. So now they're in this conundrum where they've pretty much moved everyone from that village to this village that the orcs had previously taken over. They kind of got a bunch of refugees moved over there. So it'll be interesting to see how the situation plays out, because now there's an angry blue dragon who didn't get his young, beautiful virgin snack. So now he's going to be angry.
Makes sense. That sounds fun. And let me guess, you heavily prepped all of this, and straight from your notebook?
No, literally made it all up as I went along.
But no, that's impossible. You can't do that. Come on.
Well, I think that's what people don't seem to grasp. And I will tell people, I think my style of game, if you're watching it or not engaged in it, you're probably not going to have a good time, because I don't run a kind of game where it's very conducive to an audience. It's conducive to the players only. And I think that's how most people's games really are at the end of the day. But
I feel that about any game. Like I don't even like, the Critical Role type stuff, which everyone loves. Like I get bored watching that. So
it's even when it's very much built for an audience, it's still for me boring to watch, because I want to play. I want to run the game. I want to be a player.
Exactly.
Like, I don't want to just watch other people do the thing that I wish I could do, which is play the game.
Exactly.
So I don't run games where I feel like the people would be super, if you're watching or listening, you wouldn't be super enthralled with it. It's not built for actual play. But if you're playing, I really try and cater to what the players want to do and to make their choices matter. And so in this situation, I'm using random tables, and I'm also just making stuff up out of my head based on, we've talked about knowledge of pulp and stories and things in the past. I'm making stuff up as I go, but it makes the players' choices matter. And I think that when these kind of situations arise, like now the players are even more invested in the game and the world than they were before this session, because they've now angered a blue dragon and it could cost a lot of lives, right?
Yeah.
And they would be the one responsible for it. And so I think that all played off of them making decisions and doing what they wanted to do, and making those choices that they made matter. And now there's going to be repercussions in the world. And I think that's to me what's important in building people, making people want to come back to the table every time the game. So
agreed.
Cold-blooded and violent. The only diplomacy their scaly kind understands comes from the edge of the blade. Pretty much, yeah. There was this one, the leader of the cult had like a golden staff with like a snake, draconic snake kind of entangled around it on the end. And so the party has that. They know it's magical, but they don't know exactly what it does. But yeah, they were talking to that leader. They kept him alive. They killed all his followers and slit their throats in their sleep. They're talking to him, and he's super devout. He's like, I'm not going to betray my master, because if I go back to my master without the virgin, without the woman, the young girl, like I'm dead. He fully believes in it. So they just ran him through with his sword. It was funny.
Fun.
Making stuff up, unheard of.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm excited to get the game back up and going again. We're using one time too. So the players, it took them about 3 days to do this adventure. So when is their characters unlocking? They will be, so like this Friday, I believe, is when they would get back to their home base. And their characters will unlock, which is perfect because it gives them time to have their characters unlocked for Tuesday's game. We usually run it on Tuesday afternoons. So
yeah.
Now, this is a good point. Why is it okay to make up rules, but not the story as you go?
I always wonder that myself.
I've maintained this too. Like this is really interesting to me, and I don't get this mentality, but I see it all the time in people who are skeptical of this load or zero prep gaming, and so they view the rules as immutable, right? So they view the rules as like, I can do whatever I want and I can change whatever I want. But then when it comes to these random tables that you use to generate ideas, all of a sudden that mutability goes out the window. And they're like, no, if you roll a dragon inside a closet, then that means there's a dragon in the closet. And it's like, are you dumb? Like, you have this backwards. You should view these tables and these prompts as mutable, and you should view the rules as immutable, or at least as immutable as possible for a good amount of time before you start changing things. Like, it's just so bizarre that they can sit there and be like, I'm going to fudge a roll and sort of improvise or something like that. But then it comes to using a random encounter table or a dungeon generator or something like that. And they're like, no, it said there's a wyvern inside the closet. So now it's a closet of wyverns. It's like, this is stupid and silly. It doesn't work. Your ideas are dumb. And it's like, you don't seem to to grasp this.
Well, they kind of treat the whole concept of storytelling in general as immutable. Like rules you can change, but you have to follow story gaming this very specific way. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's weird.
A Dragon in the Closet sounds like a great book title.
Yeah.
Sounds like some of those what is there's that new trend on TikTok of all those...
Lit RPG, is that called? Or...
Well, I don't know. I just think of those women on TikTok. I've heard of them from in the lit sphere. They always read like smut.
Yeah.
And they're like way into like that smut books.
Yeah.
And they talk about them on TikTok. That sounds like one of the books that they would talk about.
Yeah. I mean, I've joked before that I'm just gonna like adopt like a pen name like Victoria G. Orchev or something, and then I'm gonna like write just like fantasy smut and become rich.
Well, there's plenty of women on TikTok
Yeah,
that will buy your book and promote it for free.
Like I've known like friends of friends and stuff that did that stuff, and it was like this one chick. They made like $500,000 like just doing like erotica, basically, like just basic erotica books.
I mean, I'm not into that. I don't want to make that. People have told me like, John, you should do furry art, and I'm like, no. I think you've told me that. Like, you should just be a furry artist.
Yeah.
Do it under a different artist name, and I'm like, I can't.
Well, just be one of those ones that don't draw the smut, but just draws like period accurate, like 18th century Napoleonic soldiers, but they're like fox people, like
or something.
Yeah.
It's like a badger in like a suit.
Yeah, those exist and they do pretty well too. So yeah.
I do need to up my my freelancing though for art. I do need to get that going. It's just, man, it's just not enough time in the day.
Yeah, with your own projects and stuff.
Yeah, I'm always juggling between like the work for other people in the freelance stuff and then trying to get my own stuff done. Like I'm at a point with Atomic Punk where I'm like out of steam because it's not out of steam, but you get a little demotivated, or you get a little burnt. I guess you get a little burnt out.
Yeah,
because you're just sort of you what sounded like a good idea previously, all of a sudden you realize that it wasn't a good idea, or at least you gave yourself a heck of a lot of work. And that's what I've done to myself. I did it with the armor. I was like, what'd be good is if I illustrated every piece of armor and weapon in the book. And then I started doing it. I'm like, this sucks. I hate this. Yeah. And then I was like, what would be good if I illustrated almost every single monster in the book. Every monster had a color illustration. I'm like, this is just a lot of work.
Yeah. I'm like that with game design. I come up with some idea of like a mechanic or whatever, and it like sounds awesome in my head, and then I sit down to write it, and it's like really difficult and convoluted, and I'm like, why did I do this to myself?
Yeah. Because I thought it'd sound cool to time.
Yeah. It sounded easy. I was like, I'll crank this out in like 2 hours. Like 4 days later, you're still like poking at it.
Yeah, this is a problem for future me.
Yeah. Well, I gotcha. I think it also doesn't help that we're basically like, solo artists, I guess. Like, we do almost everything ourselves when it comes to like doing our books. And so it's just a lot easier to like get burned out, because with group projects, at least you can just do your bit and then just like, sit back for a while your friend finishes his bit. Then you come together again. But yeah. But I've definitely felt that. So good.
I was like, Crafty's in that game. The session, that was a good session on Tuesday. We're effed, but it was a good session. They were trying to figure out, because they know there's a green dragon layer to the south and there's this blue dragon layer to the north, and so they were trying to figure out, like, as they're debating with these dead lizard men around them, these dead lizard cultists are like, can we somehow trick the blue dragon into these people into the blue dragon, thinking that they actually went and pledge their allegiance to the green dragon to the south, and then we can get these dragons to fight each other, and then at least one of them will die, and then then we're down one dragon. But I don't know if it's going to work for them. So we'll see how it goes.
My party, my old D&D party, they killed a young green dragon once, and then like later on they met its brother, and he basically like forced them to like work for him, or else he was gonna like take his revenge. So that was pretty fun. And he knew that they did it too, because one of the party members was wearing armor made out of his brother. So he's like, "Oh, it was you guys."
Or at least you're wearing my brother. So
Yeah. It's like, okay, so I could like instantly murder you right now, but I need something done. So
that kind of plan can only come from games run with little to no prep. I mean, it still might work.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, I don't know what your guys' plans are. You have some time when your guys' characters get back on Friday, between Friday and next Tuesday. And if you can't make it, you still have time, even more than that, in downtime to try and maybe make some things go in motion or whatever. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. Yeah, setting lofty goals for yourself is a good thing. Yeah. What it does though is like for me with Atomic Punk is like I set this very lofty goal, but it will ultimately make for a better book. With every single piece of armor, with all the weapons, all the guns illustrated, and most of the monsters with an illustration, it's going to be a pretty good looking book.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be me wanting to kill myself as I
yeah.
as I get to that point and just run myself ragged trying to do it. So,
Well, after you're done and you get to like gold seller or whatever, or platinum or whatever on Drive to RPG, and then you're like happy that you did it.
Yeah,
Like,
and
in hindsight.
Again, I think I'm really proud of the way Atomic Punk is coming along. I'm
Looks
trying
awesome.
to get over the imposter syndrome a bit, because I look at what it looks like as far as the game looks, and as far as like presentation, layout, and everything, and art, and I'm like, this looks as good. I'm really proud of myself because it looks as good as something like a big publisher would release with
Yeah.
like a layout artist and writers and different artists. It's like it looks as good as that sort of thing, but I did it all myself. And
Yeah.
so I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah, it looks awesome.
Let's see, Beardy Ben. The analogy of rules for story is you don't want the playground equipment to randomly morph underneath the kids, but you want them to use their imagination. I think that's a good analogy, actually. Like you don't want this Inception looking piece of playground equipment for the kids to play on. They might hurt themselves. It's probably not going to be that much fun in real life, but in practice, because Inception is a cool movie, and it looks neat.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily want that undergirding your entire game at all. So I like that analogy. I think that's a good idea because the monkey bars becomes like the bridge over the lava pit, and it's sturdy. It's going to function as that in their imagination very well. So it's yeah, I like that. I like that analogy. What's up, Cornish Crusade? You're on, I see you on the Guild server with your wargaming and miniature stuff. Cool guy. Says it's first time catching your stream live. Hello from Brit Bongistan. Thank you for White Box. It's been jolly good fun using it with my ordnance survey map instead of hex crawling. Good. God bless, Bob Lawler. Well, thanks, man. I'm glad you're having a good time.
Yeah.
Someone else said they liked the previous. Let's see. I'm Shane said it this previously. I like the Wet Box weapon class expansion. Well, it's not an expansion. It's just that I explained it better and I provided a better tool to make you understand it better, which is a table that you can sort of cross-reference in order to make weapon class more understandable. Because the way I explained it, it was like you had to do the weapon class math on the fly, and obviously people don't want to slow down during combat to try and figure out, oh, this weapon is 4 classes lower than this other one, so what is available to me? I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I can figure it out, but I know not everyone else understands it. So I made a whole table. I wonder if I should just show that.
Yeah, go for it. Got to pad out the 2 hours somehow.
Yeah. I gotta find the thing here. Here it is. So let me share my screen. What happened to my? What happened? Why is it like inceptioning?
Yeah,
That's weird.
that's creepy. That like because each one is delayed too. So like when I wave, then he waves, and then yeah.
Oh, it's because this. There we go.
Yeah.
I'm using OBS virtual camera, so I've never done it before. I wanted to experiment with it, so there might be technical difficulties like that. So apologies. Share screen. So I made this PDF, and what it has is it has this table here, and if we zoom in, if you're using like a halberd against a flail, you can figure out what options you have available. So the halberd cannot parry the weapon, so you go to 1. It's more than 2 classes, so it can't parry, and you go to 7. A weapon that is 2 classes higher than the opponent's gets first strike in the first round of combat. So if you're using the halberd against the flail, you're going to get first strike against the flail, but the flail gets 2. So any weapon 1 class or 3 classes lower than the attackers, and they parry the blow by forcing a -2 penalty on the attack, this defender does not get a counterattack. So you can parry, but you can't get a counterattack. And you also get 8. So 8 is the weapon that is at least 2 classes lower than the opponent's gets first strike in any subsequent round. So the halberd's going to get to attack first. It cannot parry the flail, but it gets to attack first in the first round, the first attack in that round. But the flail is going to get to roll attacks before the halberd in any subsequent combat rounds that would occur. So it's not a new thing. This is in White Box. I explained it in White Box. I just explained it poorly.
Yeah.
So
I admit I get kind of cross-eyed with stuff like that.
Yeah, but I like it because you need something like this. This is one thing when I read Delving Deeper and when I read the 3 LBBs before I decided to look deeper into chainmail. I was like, every weapon does a D6, so it does naturally beg the question of like, why wouldn't everyone just run around with daggers? Because the daggers are cheaper, they're lighter, they do a D6 just like the sword, a 2-handed sword or a halberd does. So, if everything does a D6, how do you make everything different? And so when I read chainmail and I saw that all the same weapons that are in chainmail are all the same weapons available to players in 0E, I was like, oh, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to use weapon class.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense, yeah.
I admit I'm one of the people that needed the weapon class chart add-on. You're not the only one. A lot of people did. So don't feel bad at all. I realized talking to multiple people that were trying to run the game, they're just like, look, bro, I'm not even using weapon class because I can't figure out how to make that work. And so I was like, well, that's a failure on my part, a learning lesson in how to explain mechanics, which is like your worst fear at the same time. It's like as a designer, I don't know if you've ever had that happen before, where you've written something and someone comes back to you and they're like, I don't understand this.
Yeah. No, that happens to me all the time.
And it's like a legitimate one. It's not like you're just illiterate and you don't know how to read, go back and read it again. It's that like, you're right. I failed in this regard.
Yeah.
I love this kind of thing. I feel like there's a way to make it more elegant. Well, hopefully the chart makes it a bit easier. It's much easier to just reference it and be like, I can do this, this, and this. These are the things that I'm able to do with this weapon. What weapon differentiation is super good. I think so too. And I think like Molde and a lot of the like Greyhawk essentially went the different route of changing the damage dice for weapons. You got, you started rolling D8s for long swords and a D4 for daggers and stuff like that. And that's one way of doing it. And that solves the problem of the D20 attack roll in 0E. But as a thought exercise for me, it's more interesting to look at chainmail and limit yourself to just chainmail. And how do you make this thing work?
Yeah.
different damage amounts doesn't differentiate all that much, unfortunately, which is why I think like 1E has weapon speed. You have the weapon speed numbers, which functions very similar to weapon class in 0E, but so you have the different damage dice and you're getting a lot of the same stuff that 0E chainmail stuff is doing as well. So yeah, I love the chart. It definitely makes it easier than doing this math on the fly in the middle of combat where I'm already doing math for weapon versus AC. Yeah. That was my hope. I should have included this in the book, and I just didn't think about it at the time.
Yeah, it happens. Like I said, we're solo creators, can do everything. And hopefully people understand that.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know, 0E is already mysterious and hard to understand in and of itself. And so I feel like any bit of illumination you can try and give, to something, that's all the better for it. Like, even if I do it imperfectly initially, I'm still trying to point people towards the old game and help them understand it. That's funny. You're working on a 2D10 game system. My Atomic Punk is a 2D10 game system.
Yeah, you invented 2D10. So
I invented it. I'm the first one to ever roll 2D10 ever.
Yeah.
I'm going to go griff on you and tell you this is IP theft. How dare you? No, that's cool, man. I think success thresholds are cool. One game I really like that uses that is Lex Arcana, which is like a dice pool system, but you have like levels of success based on how well you beat the target number.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of mechanic is neat. Gives a little bit of variety and crunch to playing the game.
Yeah.
The more I play Chainmail and OD&D and AD&D 1E, the more I see D&D as the most awesome wargame campaign supplement ever written. I think, there's a reason why it was number one. It wasn't just that it was the first, because sometimes, I guess sometimes, the first thing isn't always the best thing. Like, if that was the case, we'd still be using those big brick cell phones, for example. But we don't. The stuff that came after us is better. But it is true. I think there's something special about these old games where they distilled a lot of stuff. So,
yeah.
No, man, I'm just messing with you. I wish you luck on your 2D10 game system. I'm sure whatever you're doing, I'm interested to see which way you go with it, but I'm sure whatever you're doing is big, huge, way different than what I'm doing. What I'm doing is like stupid crunch, classic Traveler style, like modifiers. Like there's a target number of 11 in my system. And then like when you attack, if you're using a certain kind of weapon against a certain armor, there's going to be a modifier to hit, either penalty or bonus. And then you add like your own character modifiers to skip from skills or ability scores. And you're trying to hit the target number. And generally like you have to do a bunch of modifier math in order to get like your final modifier. And then you can make your roll. So
yeah.
Or you can modify the target number. Either way works. But mine is very, very crunchy in that regard. And I don't know why chat is censoring words.
I should Dutch.
Probably. He's just a passerby. He's one of your people, I think, right?
Yeah.
So.
Sadly. He's a northerner, so they're the weirdos over here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you Europeans, you're so like for us, it's like people from different states, which there could be thousands of miles between us, hundreds of miles between us in these states. But for you, it's like, man, those people that live 5 miles up the road, screw those guys.
Yeah, basically,
they're barely human.
Yeah. Oh. So imagine what we feel about guys that are like 100 miles away.
He says, I just got the idea from playing a lot of BattleTech, but 2D6 doesn't work as well with success thresholds. Yeah, you got like a lot. 2d10, when you look at the spread of 2d10, it's like perfect, and I don't know why more people don't use it.
Yeah.
It's like amazing what it looks like.
I was using on my 2d6 system on my ammo box stuff, but I might abandon the whole 2d6 thing because I don't know. I've been struggling with it. I rewrote that whole thing like 5 times so far, and it just wasn't making any headway. I'm just getting frustrated. So that's kind of why I did that the new project that I'm working on, and I kind of went back to more classic white books because I don't know, it's easy.
Yeah,
straightforward.
Sometimes you need a palate cleanser for that sort of thing. But yeah, I love the way the spread of 2d6 looks. If we look at this here,
2d10, you mean? Yeah.
The 2d10, yeah. I mean, it's like perfect.
Yeah.
The way the percentages work, the way the numbers work, it's like everything is perfect. It's beautiful. I don't know why like more games don't use 2d10.
I mean, I would love to use 2d10, but you already stole it, so.
Well, I let people, more than happy to let people build off of what I've done.
Yeah. So. Well, I've got my my atomic system project in the works slowly.
Yeah. Redacted when? Well, Vic and I started work on a preliminary document. I need to probably just go back to it. We're both like Vic is working on modern necessities. I'm working on my stuff. Like we just gotta finish the stuff on our plate first before we move to that one. But I think once we do, with just the both of us working on it, I think we'll get it done pretty quick.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Kind of that 90s X-Files vibe. I think picking the 90s is a good era to do it in, where tech is there, but it's not too there. But
yeah, you can get away with like being in the wilderness somewhere and not having like cell service because you're like holding like a big brick, and I don't know. I think it makes like monsters and the supernatural and the mysterious more scary when the world's less connected. If that makes sense.
Yeah. You when you heard like urban legends and things like that.
Yeah.
It was definitely more interesting and spooky than now, where it's like, I don't know, you can research something in 5 seconds and go like, oh, it's not true, but it loses that enchantment that we had when we were growing up in the 80s and 90s, and it was like, did you hear about the haunted insane asylum that's on the other side of town? And you hear this like story, and it's awesome, and then you look it up as an adult and you're like, oh, none of it's true. But
well, that's why I want one of those factions to be like the truthers or whatever you want to call them, like truth.net, where it's just like the old school like GeoCities sites with the spinning gifs and stuff like that, and they just like give like some weird conspiracy theories, and this is like the early days of the internet, so yeah, I think that's fun.
I hear Greg typing. How you doing, Greg? God, you can.
How's it going?
Greg you were talking about on the server about you're going to redo. I don't know if you want to. I don't know if I'm spoiling anything, but you're thinking about redoing Ares for like a new system, or just like making it more fantastical, 2E.
Well, yeah, we're redoing the entire setting from the ground up, everything.
Have you settled on a system?
Haven't settled. It's right now. It's between Castles and Crusades and 5th edition Raw, 2014 5th edition.
Yeah.
Like, so I mean, the previous book was for 5th edition. So would it be that you're just going to include all like the rules within the rule book themselves and just sort of change some things up as well?
No, I want to redo the entire history and the lore, and really cut down on a lot of the bloat and all the extra crap that's in there. And I mentioned it. I think I want to strip out all the Forgotten Realm isms from it. All the Baldur's Gate isms that are like kind of left over from like when I was playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's like, oh, well, we have mind flayers and that type of shit. I don't want to do any of that. I want it to be like strictly like European mythological history. We're gonna have like change all the races to be inspired by that. We're gonna follow the Titans of Fallen Earth book layout too. So what we're gonna thinking about doing is having like major faction regions. So like the continent is broken up by faction, and then you can have like strong faction play as well with NPCs and like races for each like region. I think that might be queer. Might be a better like overall experience for the player, something that they might want to use, because right now it's just dump a ton of lore and then have like some classes that are like too complicated, and then I don't know, there's a lot I want to change about it.
Sounds very Eurocentric.
Yes.
Well, I like the idea of like going back to more. I mean, we've talked about this before, but a more traditional fantasy. Or just like real mythology. I guess I'll tell people what my 5e project is. It's probably going to get me in trouble, but I always pick projects that will probably get me in trouble.
RPG Gate.
Yeah. So what I'm working on is it's a 5th edition project, but I've always looked at like Adventures in Middle Earth, and Adventures in Middle Earth is just peak 5e in my opinion, and I think it's because when you strip out the everything is magical, and you actually strip out the magic user class or the wizard class, the magic caster classes, and you maybe reserve that for villains, like it's not a bad system. It works fine at what it does. And I've had a lot of fun with Adventures in Middle Earth, and I've always looked at it and been like, man, I could apply this to other settings. So my idea is it's in the middle of the 7th century, so the 600s. Heraclius I is emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire. He's just beaten back the Sassanid Empire and reclaimed the True Cross from Persia. And he's returned back to Constantinople with his banner of the Virgin Mary and the child Christ and everything. And everything's doing really well until the first Islamic Caliphate rises and is starting to sweep through. And the Battle of Yarmouk, I think it's called, occurs. And the Byzantines lose like Egypt and part of that area to the Caliphate and to the rising Islamic Bedouin tribes and everything like that. So I have like lots of really cool ideas, and I love the historical stuff, obviously with Makuhito and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to do another historical project, and so I think this is going to be mine. Yes,
but
Greg.
Only I
Yeah.
make historical fantasy. No, that sounds like a good thing. And,
and I want to draw from like like Arabic and Byzantine stuff. Like I got a lot of ideas for monsters that'll be like very much grounded in real life and like people's real views of mythology. I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about in, I think, Greece. Like in the 1800s, the priests had like their little book, the Christian priests that would go through like, this is what you do in this situation. This is what you do in this situation. And one of them has this whole section on what to do with vampires. Like it's real. Like this is a problem we actually have with vampires. So this is how you deal with vampires. And I was like looking at it and I'm like, this is listening to it and researching it. I'm like, this is rad stuff. I'm totally going to make this like more grounded and what these people's views of like werewolves and vampires and things like that are. So it'll be like a different take on this sort of the more like classical, it's become classical now, but the more like pop culture version of a lot of these monsters,
I've been going back and you probably have been too, reading a lot of historical sources and watching like videos on symbology and myth and stuff like that. And like I started researching like what Tolkien based his elves on and the actual mythology behind that and stuff like that. And I don't want to have like Forgotten Realms like wood elves anymore. Like they're cheesy to me now. I want to have something more authentic. And I know that you do all your own art, but like for this type of project, I'm gonna go for like all like tapestries and illuminated manuscripts and European like wood block, like wood carving type of art and like all that like cool stuff. But I'm not gonna use like stock art. I've got some people like who are gonna do good fantasy stuff.
I actually started working on poking at a 5e project a few months ago. I did that Woke subclass, the Weaver. You guys might remember that.
Yeah,
The sword and sorcery like Woke. So I was like thinking like kind of expanding that into like a full project at some point. So full blown like Conan, like Barbarians of Lemuria, like 5e, like sword and sorcery would be fun, I think. So
I think there's a place for that, because I think with all these projects, and what my plan with it is, I'm going to include all the rules. Like, I'm using the 5.1 SRD, and I'm going to include all the rules within it. So it's not something where you need. My plan for it is, it's not something where you're going to need to have your 5e handbook and your DMG. Like, I'm going to try and put everything in 2 books. So there's going to be a player book and there's going to be a referee book, and I want to have everything in there that you need to run the game, that you don't need to give Wizards of the Coast money to run the game still. But I think like with 5e, I think 5e going the way of the dodo as far as WotC is concerned, because they're going to kill it. I mean, they're talking about using AI and stuff like that. I think it's a good time to maybe try and reclaim 5th edition.
Yeah.
In a lot of respects, because like I have very fond memories of 2014 and running 5e, and it wasn't. I realized it wasn't really the game that got terrible. I just got sick of the culture around it. Yeah. And I think with a lot of the worst people in the hobby probably going to 5.5 or whatever they want to call it, I think it's going to be the 5e realm is going to have there's going to be a place for us to get our foot in and actually make cool stuff.
Yeah.
For that.
System. But like you, I'm also I love Adventures in Middle Earth, and I love because it's a bit more gritty and it's so low magic. So I want to do something similar, and Sword and Sorcery works for that, because I like when, like, in the Conan movie, like Tulsa Doom obviously has like magic, like he turns a snake into an arrow, but that should be the extent of it, or he turns himself into a giant snake. But like I like when it's like magic like that, and that's like still scary.
Yeah.
Well, almost 5e, that would be like a level 1 spell and nobody cares. But I want this like to actually be like a high level thing in this setting.
Yeah. Well, for me, like, and what I'm thinking is like, it's going to be like pagan sorcerers and things like that are the ones that are going to be the spellcasters. And my assumption is going to be pretty much every character is going to be in service to the Byzantine Empire. And you're dealing with the rise of like the Avars and the Slavic barbarian tribes on the border of the empire, the dying Sassanid Empire that's also dealing with the rise themselves of Islam and the Caliphate and everything like that. So, yeah.
Greg that's my only reservation about like 5e is like, I feel like all the people who wanted to buy my setting book have already bought it for 5th edition. So it's like, yes, everything in a revamped version would be almost completely different. But who in the 5th edition world is going to want to like buy it? Like, like in the end, somebody's got to buy it, or else I won't get any money back from all the art and stuff I invested in it, unfortunately. So it's like, that's my only reservation, because it's like there are systems that don't have a cool setting like that. Castles and Crusades doesn't. Their aired setting is more like a pulp sword and sorcery. Certainly not any kind of like BX type of thing, except for maybe OSE. Now, Dolmenwood is ostensibly similar to what I want to do, because they're trying to go with like fairy tales and stuff like that. Yeah. So I don't know if I want to go OSE, because that would be like a major competitor for me.
You could always go based Giga Chat and do a 2nd edition.
Frank wanted to do that, and that would be very Giga Chat, but I'm like, who plays that?
Plenty of people. 2nd edition is still really popular, low key. Just there's not really much that caters to it, so people don't really get to talk about it much.
It'd be a risk, but
I mean, I know OSE and Labyrinth Lord, and there's like a bunch Osric, and like a bunch of the OSR books kind of have some hints of 2nd edition like rules that they put in to like streamline things.
Yeah, like Hyperborea. Like that's kind of a mix between 1E and 2E, and that's really popular. So you could always like you don't really have to also tie yourself to an existing like rule set. You could also just make your own OSR, like to your own
I
liking
thought
and
about even
flavor.
making it rules agnostic, system agnostic.
Yeah,
But
I
if
mean,
people don't have
there's a way to go about that. Like with monsters, you provide like a ascending and descending AC, and you make you the language of the creature abilities and things like that. You can change up a bit. The classes might be difficult, but
you would definitely be catering more to the OSR crowd rather than like a general crowd. But if you go 5e, then you're catering to that crowd rather than like a general crowd. So
yeah.
well, I think that Crafty's point here, he says 5e's time is sunsetting. I think to a degree it is, but like I said earlier, what we were talking about is I think it's a good time to kind of get a foot back in the door there and like reclaim it, because my view, and Crossface has said this first, my view of 5e is that it's going to be a pretty well remembered. I think it's going to be remembered in the same way like 2e is remembered, where it's very similar to 2e in a lot of respects, as Crossface points out. So I think it'll be like, I think it's going to still have some longevity and staying power. And I think a lot of people are not going to move. They're happy with 5e. They're not going to move to this newfangled Fortnite version of 5e with microtransactions and everything.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's going to be a foot in the door. I'm hoping like my thing will show some things about 5e. I feel like I'm a better designer now than I was when I first tried to make something for 5e. Like I know what I'm doing a little bit more.
Yeah.
I have like better tastes.
Yeah.
I'm wiser than I was then. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, Crafty Matt and Nordic have a point there. Nordic's like, I don't want the culture crowd at my table for 5e.
Yeah.
Crafty says that crowd doesn't play 5e anymore. I still think there's a good mix out there.
Yeah, I think
like-
there's like a silent majority, maybe. I'm not maybe minority or whatever, but there's like this silent group of like 5e players that just they play the game. They play it fairly traditionally. They do dungeon crawls, they do adventures and stuff, but you just don't really hear about them much because all the online discourse and all the pop culture discourse is about like the Critical Role stuff. So
yeah, I mean, I guess he's not my buddy, but the happy console gamer Johnny Millennium was showing off Shadowdark in his latest game stuff video. He's like, "This is after I try Shadowdark. This is the last RPG. This is the last time I ever play any kind of RPG." He's like so fed up with the way that it's going. He's just like completely done. Like he doesn't even want to play it anymore. So it's like that's kind of sad if you think about it, because like it's just been. There's so many people out there who don't know about anything outside of the Wizards of the Coast world, and they may not like Wizards of the Coast, and to them, that's it for RPGs.
Yeah.
Well,
that sucks.
Well, like to this comment here, one of the players in my in-person group, he's only ever played 5e until he started gaming with me. And so, we started playing, he joined our game and we were playing BX for a while and stuff like that. And he's played other games. I've introduced him to the games I've made. I've introduced him to Classic Traveler. We play Classic Traveler. And he loves it all. Like he's legit into the hobby. But he's not really online. He like has a Facebook. He doesn't have a Twitter. He doesn't really watch YouTube. Like for him, like he's not like a quote unquote woke guy at all. Like not at all. He does not morally or politically aligned with those people at all. But he plays 5e, and him and his other group play 5e. And when I started talking to him and started telling him all the things that like Wizards of the Coast is doing, he was just completely unaware because he's just so disconnected from the internet. He's not an online weirdo like us that he's just like, what? Like this is what Dungeons and Dragons has become now. Like he didn't even know. And I felt bad that I ruined his perception of that.
Yeah.
But
I mean, we're all thinking about and trying to do things like that fit a niche that 5e doesn't have, right? Like you've got your hardline historical stuff that you're about to try and like work on, and Victor's got things in the pipeline, and I've got the high fantasy thing. So, maybe there will be an audience out there for like people who just know Forgotten Realms and they just know Ravenloft and Chris Estrad, and that maybe they're looking for something. Maybe they'll pick the game back up if they see something cool out there.
I definitely know some people that they have like zero interest in the 2024 stuff, and they're just like they like the 2014 5e and they're sticking with it. So I think maybe catering to that crowd with like they still get like new releases and like cool stuff that comes out. I don't know, it might work. But the Castle of the Crusades could also work. But then you not to throw shade on them, but you had like a little bit of a negative experience with them. So
yeah, it's not necessarily negative. It's just that they're not like Kelsey with Shadowdark. Like,
yeah,
super supportive, promoting your stuff. If you make like content for the game, it's like people know about it.
yeah.
Like with Castles and Crusades, if you make something for Castles and Crusades, it just kind of flies under the radar, and nobody cares or like hears about it. And that's my only gripe. Like, it's like there's crickets chirping in the background. Whereas if I made it for Shadowdark, like the entire internet would converge on it, and oh my god, it's like weird.
Kelsey would like drop it on her Discord, like she retweet it. But even like old school essentials, even Necrotic Gnome, they put you in the newsletter, like so they also pretty supportive. So
Shadowdark is too simplistic for what I want to do, which is long term, high fantasy campaign play with factions.
Also, Shadow. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I've said this before, but Shadowdark has a very specific, like that whole, it's you against the darkness, and you have to manage your light sources and stuff. That to me is such a core part of like that game. Like I'm always leery of like stuff that tries to remove that. So like if you remove that, then it just becomes generic, like kind of like OSR stuff. Like that's like Shadowdark's selling point, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and it doesn't work for every settings. That's what I'm saying.
Right. I don't think Shadowdark can have support with the core game anyway. She might be working on an advanced version as far as we know.
That'd be cool.
But I don't think it can support like a continent of mythic overworld, underworld that you explore the whole continent and it lasts like years,
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, like, I'm just saying your setting doesn't sound grimdark, where it's like the darkness is actually a thing where you have to like worry about, and you have to like wander around with torches, and if it goes out, something will show up to eat you. And that's, to me, is such a core part of Shadowdark that it doesn't work with every setting.
Exactly. And it works with Blacklight.
Yeah, definitely. I purposely made it so, Blacklight still incorporated that, and I actually developed a setting around that, so... But yeah, it works with more grimdark stuff, basically.
Yeah, I'm not. It's not that I'm skeptical of Shadowdark. I wish Kelsey the best, of course, and I think it's cool what she's done. She's drawn a lot of people to the old school side of the scene, which gets more eyes on a lot of people's stuff. But I do see the worry that Greg has of just like, is this system going to be able to undergird things enough? I think like the thing I struggled with making anything for Shadowdark beyond just like, here's a dungeon or something, is that the torch mechanic, I think it's not just a gimmick. It is very important. The light versus darkness thing is very important. And so you have to make something, if it's not going to be like for straight up fantasy dungeon delve Shadowdark, you have to be able to make something that's going to utilize that. Otherwise it's just like, well, what is this? What's the point? And I feel like a lot of stuff centers around that torch mechanic and the idea of real-time torch time. And so if you're not able to implement that or use it, it does beg a lot of questions as to like, why is this being made?
And even the layout and the overall look and feel of the book itself is designed for a level of simplicity that was 100% intentional on her part. Like you flip to the races, and like the race might have one sentence that says, "You can see in the dark." That's like, I'm not bashing her for simplicity. It's just like that.
It makes it fast.
It makes it fast. It makes it fun, easy to roll characters, but it doesn't support the type of like high fantasy feel that I'm looking for.
It's better for pulp stuff. But sorry, go ahead.
No, that's why I basically wrote Blacklight the way I did. It's set up more for like, you're just going on like a mission and then see if you survive, and then we'll do another mission tomorrow maybe. It's like more one-shot type stuff. So
Yeah, White Box is good, Nathan. OD&D has a level of strange openness to it where it's like you kind of can do whatever you want. Like,
Yeah.
not necessarily. I mean, you have to follow certain specific guidelines and rules for how races and classes and combat works, of course. But it's like, if I'm designing a race, I can just be like, they do this, and like the GM decides if it works or not. I don't know. That's like, so it's a
It-
little bit less structured, I think.
It's Zero E is very focused. Like, I think there's a reason why there's only 3 classes in the original game, because
Yeah.
those 3 classes sort of encompass a lot of tropes within them, because the classes are so simple, but yet they
Yeah.
cover a lot of ground. So it's like you pick a fighting man, and it's pretty easy to envision yourself as Conan, both like decked out in armor, but then also maybe just wearing your loincloth and climbing the Tower of the Elephant as well, which is arguably why there's no thief class in there as well, because there's a lot of stuff that any class can almost do. There's a lot of freedom in it that is kind of lacking in later editions of the game, where they tried to sort of really narrow down the archetypes that they're playing on. There's an openness to a lot of Zero E. I don't want to say it's a total GM Fiat game,
No.
but it does strike a good balance, I think, of being something that you can kind of really riff on, and you have a lot of wiggle room to interpret things, but there's also like there's still a good skeletal bones to the game underneath as well.
I think it was designed that way on purpose by those guys. I'm not an expert on it by any means, but it's like, you're right. Like, he was reading a lot of fantasy, like pulp stuff, and Robert E. Howard, and he wanted players to be able to kind of make their character feel like their favorite archetypical hero from any of those stories. It could be Edgar Rice Burroughs, it could be Robert E. Howard, it could be Tolkien. Like, you can kind of make that fit with like a fighting man,
Yeah.
He didn't want it to be limited.
I always struggle with the whole like you only have like 3 classes thing, though. At least when I'm writing stuff, like I'm the kind of guy that will put like 20 classes in a game, which I literally did with Modern Necessities. And like, because I don't know, I like classes, I like writing them, I like coming up with like all these different archetypes and like trying to figure out how to like convert that to a mechanical type of like RPG mechanics. So like, I don't think I could ever write a game where it's like, here's like the 3 classes. It's fighting man, it's wizard man, and it's TV man. And then like leave it at that.
Yeah. You're coming from on that.
But I think there's that. It takes a special kind of player though too. A special kind of like it's just a totally different mindset.
Yeah.
That you kind of have to get over, and you do have to know the rules. Like you do have to know how to use existing things in order to get done what you want to get done. Like the big thing I talk about with like the lack of thieves is like, well, just roll for surprise. Like the fighting man is like, I'm going to sneak ahead into the room and see if I can sneak past the guards, And it's like, okay, well, maybe he's wearing like leather armor. So you're like, you know what? I'll give him a bonus. Like on a 1 to 3, he has like a 50% chance of sneaking past these guys. I'm going to do a surprise check, because normally surprises on a 1 to 2, you're surprised. So like you just roll the D6 and you're like, oh, well, they're surprised or they're not surprised, right? So you just got to kind of know how to use the existing tools within that toolbox to adjudicate different aspects of the game that you might run into.
Yeah.
And I love it. It's so much fun to do that, but it's definitely not everyone's cup of tea. So there's that too.
Well, I also worry when I'm writing stuff that I'm not offering enough to make it worth people's time and money. Like I wanna have like plenty of content in my books, so people actually want to spend money on it. So like I always feel weird when like I just keep stuff to bare bones. That's why I have like 100 guns in my games and stuff like that. I could just be like pistol, rifle, shotgun, assault rifle. Like I've seen plenty of games do that, but I don't know. That's just boring to me, and I don't want to like feel like I'm whipping people off.
Yeah, you have to offer if you're going to go like
Yeah.
light in that route. You have to offer stuff in other areas, which I
Yeah.
think Zero E does. Like when you look at what Zero E can do, you're like, wow, I can have mass battles on the surface, and there's castles and like building castles and domain play. So it's like the idea of these three archetypes in the game becomes less of a problem when I think you look at it holistically. But if you're stripping away too much,
Yeah.
then yeah, you can like, what's the point of buying your thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and working on that Titans game has given me kind of a new perspective on how to write games. Because I never was an expert on games. I mean, I like lore and story and shit like that. But it's like that book is 200 pages, and my first setting book for Iries is like 400 pages, and I'm like, Titans is a complete book, like a complete game with a whole setting and everything too, and it conveys just as much as that 400-page book. So I'm like, why is it 400 pages? I think it's more effective if you go for more of like a visual storytelling. Like you don't need all that bloat, all that extra text and lore. Like it should say like what you want it to say through like the layout and the artwork and stuff like that. That's really where I want to go.
Yeah. I like a few paragraphs of lore, but when it's like
Yeah.
read this history of the land and it's like 6 pages, I just kind of like tap out. I'll be honest.
Oh, mine is 60 pages long.
Yeah.
It's like way too bloated. It's way too much. It's got to be back.
There's a balancing point there. Like Atomic Punk is going to probably be sub 200 pages, but it's going to have like multiple classes. I think I have like 8 or so classes in it. A monster generator, and then some set monsters themselves, and then rules for doing settlements and things like that. So it's gonna have a lot of stuff in it, and then plus like some basic information on a default setting. And yeah, it's clocking in, I think, like at 170 pages or something like that at this point, thereabouts. So it's like I think writing that, and I think doing Makuhito too, like in the same vein, Greg kind of taught me like how do I need to how do I need to write in order to convey a lot of information in a small amount of space,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to deal with that soon with that new project that I'm working on, because that's gonna include like a whole setting, and I'm gonna have to figure out how to convey that without making it bloated.
Yeah, I see people in chat kind of complaining about the D20, and I kind of get it, but at the same time, I think, I don't know, I'm not burnt out on the D20 yet, at least just yet.
I'm actually my love for it actually got rekindled kind of recently, probably because people have been complaining so much about it, and I'm a contrarian, and it's like you guys are like all griping about it without for the most part, any good reason. So you know what? I'm gonna love the D20 extra hard now.
Yeah. And I think that's the one thing too we kind of forget with a lot of old school games. Like 5e, for example, is very D20 centric.
Yeah.
And I think that started with 3.5 and 3rd edition, where like let's unify everything onto the D20, which makes sense from a simplicity standpoint. But like when you look at 0E, for example, you're rolling D6s for surprise and initiative. You're rolling a D20 for attacks, but then a D6 for damage. And then you look at the spells, and like the sleep spell, you got to roll, I think, like a D10 plus a D6. So and then you're rolling percentile dice for other things. It's just like, there's not one cohesive mechanic that's sort of like, there's the combat mechanic that's the D20 and saving throws, but then like surprise and initiative is on this D6 mechanic, but then turn undead is 2D6. So I don't know. I feel like there's enough variety where in the old games, you're rolling a bunch of different stuff enough to where maybe some people look at it and they're like, this is disjointed, but it also is a lot of variety at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I'm not tired of the D20 just yet.
My 5th edition players who played with us in high school with 2nd edition have always felt that something was missing from 5th edition, and they were like, It just feels like there's a hole here that needs to be filled, and that's I think what you just described is one of the things that is missing. Like when they sit down at the table, they don't even get out their D12. They don't get out the percentile dice. It just stays in the bag.
Mhm.
You know, it's like they
Might need it
used
every
to,
once in a while, but
yeah, like they used to love being like digging through and like finding the right dice and like, stuff like that was fun. It's fun to have dice, like, you
Yeah.
know.
and that's something I'm trying to consider as I work on my 5e thing. I think is you don't want to stray too far from the D20 for the central core mechanic in 5e. I think because we've
Yeah.
talked about this before. You start changing stuff and you start breaking stuff in 5e because everything
Yeah.
is more interconnected in 5e than you really fully understand at the start, I think.
Yeah.
And you it's not until you start changing things that you're like, wow, I just broke a bunch of stuff because I instead of a D20, I decided to make this a percentile roll or something like that. But I don't know, I'm trying to decide as to like is there a way to make this simpler, I guess. I don't know.
And you might be able to like fill in some kind of like gaps that 5e has. Like the morale rules aren't that the greatest in 5e, or people don't like them as much. So you could
Yeah.
always replace that with a more old school one, and that shouldn't really break anything because it's mostly just like a saving throw against wisdom, I think.
Yeah, I thought about that stuff like that too, where you have to.
Yeah,
It takes reading the books.
yeah,
You got to read your books and look at like, I know I could change this. So yeah, morale is one of those things where you could
Mhm.
be like, I could probably take out.
Reaction rolls.
Yeah, reaction rules are not in there, but I could probably take out the wisdom save morale check and then dump in a more complex system from like AD&D first edition where it's like a
Yeah,
percentile roll.
yeah,
Um, you got to look for those things like that to where like where can I old schoolify some of these parts
yeah,
still without breaking it? Because when I first tried to do that, I was trying to old schoolify the parts that were very breakable and very fragile, and I didn't realize that. And
yeah,
I think that's partly what led to my frustration with 5e because I didn't really know what I was doing at the time yet. I'd been playing 5e for a while, but I didn't understand it from a designer standpoint as well as I thought I did.
yeah,
And so I ended up breaking a lot of stuff.
yeah. Yeah, the core system is very tight and interconnected, and then there's like some random, like kind of like afterthought stuff that you could change probably.
Yeah, like I have ideas for like I feel like even removing death saves. Like you can't really even remove death
Hmm.
saves. I know some people do. Like I'll just do death at 0, but part of me is sort of like you should keep death saves, but make death saves when you have to make them punishing. And so for my game, one of my ideas is like looking at Axe is a mortal wound table.
Yeah,
Like, okay, you've had to start making death saves, which means you were reduced to 0 hit points. You've been rendered unconscious. You're dying and bleeding out on the ground. And what's going to be the consequence of that? So I think there's like ways where you can change it in that regard, which I know the 5e DMG has stuff for that too.
yeah, but like it's a bit more simple, so you could always expand it. Because I've seen
Yeah.
third-party stuff that expanded on that, like. Because I think right now it's like, oh, you lost an eye or you lost an arm, or but that's like third-party stuff where it's like, oh, you like punctured the lung, so like.
Yeah. So Nathan Enders says, I hear that Gary believed, so I mean, we don't know if this is true or not, but using this would make sense to me. Using the same mechanics for different resolutions was bad game design. I agree. 5e skill and the save system is literally the same thing, and it annoys me. And I think it's just because, like, you're rolling for surprise on a d6, and so you were surprised on a 1 to 2, so that's like a 33% chance of being surprised. And if you're just putting everything on a d20 or everything on some kind of universal mechanic, the chances of that change for better or worse as far as the players are concerned. So I think it's just stuff like that. It's like maybe a 1 in 6 thing is better than rolling a d20 for everything. It's just in 5e it's finding where you can and can't do that, where you're going to break the game and where you won't break the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like one thing I want to do in my thing is when I think it should have been done in 5e is feats should have been in the DMG. I think they shouldn't have put that stuff in the player's handbook because then it operates under the assumption that the players are entitled to it when it's optional. And like Castles and Crusades has its feats in the DMG, so the players don't see it, so they don't know, and so it's up to the referee to be like, all right, we can use feats. Here's the ones you can pick from, and they can give them the DMG and they can pick from it, but it's not in their book. So
I personally like feats, but my design choice for that will be just to kind of tone them down if I do that sword and sorcery game. So there will still be feats, but they're not going to be quite as like powerful and like meta and game breaking as they are in like Core 5e. Or at least I'm going to try to write them that way. So it's like a little bit more low key.
Yeah, I agree. When I was looking at like the feats in Castles and Crusades, for example, they're written in that way where they're pretty good. They're like they give you a benefit. It's nice to have them, but it's not like this is gonna. I'm gonna.
You require this for this class.
Yeah. And now I steamroll everything.
Yeah.
So.
That's where that whole build mentality comes in. It's like, well, if I combine this subclass with these feats and then do this, then I'm pretty much like indestructible and I can like, attack from like 15 feet away and
I'm like invisible for 5 turns. Essentially,
I hate that shit.
And I double damage and I triple damage. It's like
yeah.
See if we can catch up on chat here. I missed anything. Yeah, chapter 1 of the 1E DMG may explain why Gary did what he did. I'd like to do, I still want to talk about doing a stream, maybe every once in a while, where we pick through the books and just provide commentary on it. I think people would enjoy that. But like reading the 1E DMG or like reading, because the 1E DMG and the 1E PHB are designed to be like overlaid on each other. The chapters align. So you can read the first few chapters, like the player information in the PHB in the player's handbook, and then you can read it in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and together you get like the full picture. I think it'd be interesting to do that on a stream and just talk about it, but that'll be something we have to plan in the future.
Yeah.
It's not only that, but also hoping that players for 5e won't throw a temper tantrum if you change something. I think that's why you have to pick the peripheral things that you can change that will affect the game and its flavor and feel, but it's not going to break the game in a way where you're going to make people upset. And that's something I feel like I didn't really know how to do a few years ago. And I feel like after studying and reading and designing and playing, I really, the last few years have been devoted to that. I feel like I really know what I'm doing a bit more than when I was doing previously.
Yeah, same.
So I'm excited to go back and try and look at 5e and just try and see what I can do with it. You know, because I was looking at, for instance, I used to like it, hardcore mode, hardcore 5e by Hankerin guy.
Yeah.
And while it's neat, one thing I immediately saw was, for instance, how he did. I think he did hit points or something for monsters using challenge rating. And I'm like, okay, I see what you're trying to do, but it doesn't actually work. You didn't really fix the problem. I think that's what it was. There was something with like challenge rating and the monsters where I was like, I don't like what you did here. It's just a different set of problems now.
Yeah, that's why I also want to revisit my 5e modern project at some point and basically do a complete rewrite, like a second edition, maybe make it like a whole standalone game. Because I do think I'm a much better designer now than when I first started on that like 4 years ago. I kind of didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of went into it blind, and I wasn't even planning it to be like a whole book at that point. It was just like a fun little project, and then all of a sudden I was a game designer. So, but yeah. So yeah, I definitely want to revisit that someday because I think it's probably not all that great. I mean, I know people like it, but
Yeah, I have it on my shelf. I've looked at it. It's good.
Yeah,
I mean oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No,
go ahead. You said, I mean, you're gonna, but but
I don't really run modern. I don't know if
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
ever I don't know if I'd ever
Yeah.
use it. I could probably steal some of your ideas for other things though, but
Yeah. There's probably some good stuff in there still, yeah. But yeah. I just think I'm a better designer now. I'm probably also better at like layout and like, figuring out how a book is supposed to be put together. And I did make some horrible newbie mistakes with that one. Like I wrote it in A4 because that's like the European like thing. I had no idea about like standard book sizes at the time. So like at the last minute for like the hardcover, I had to convert it to A5, and it completely like shifted all the layout and ruined everything.
yeah. Nathan Ender says a good gold for XP system would help 5e's annoying XP system, and that's something I kind of want to address in my game. See, my game though is going to be different and interesting in that like gold and treasure it's not going to be a gold for XP thing, and this is something where it kind of clicked for me in making Makuhito, because Makuhito doesn't use gold for XP necessarily, because gold for XP motivates players to go and explore things. But in my setting, where you're fighting, in my game, in my 5e idea, when you're fighting the Caliphate, you're fighting the Avars and the Slavs and all these Hunnic tribes and things like that. Treasure is part of it. Like, you're going to get loot from beating these people, but it's not everything. And so I think what I learned with Makuhito is trying to provide XP values to other things players can do as well. Yeah. Like one of them was like get married, have children, or defend a settlement, or raid a settlement, or get slaves or something like that. Because it's Aztecs had slaves. So a lot of things like that where I gamified them XP wise, and I was able to actually keep the same XP thresholds for characters, but now you have all these other ways of gaining XP that kind of make up for the lack of getting treasure.
Yeah.
And so the beauty of that design is that like I can still drop in those Aztec classes into a normal 0E game, for example, and they don't have to be on a totally entirely different XP system. They could use gold for XP. It'll work with their XP thresholds, but they can also get XP in other ways from what's listed in Makuhito. So
yeah,
I think that's what I'm trying to figure out, what I want to do with 5e as well, because it does the 5e system is pretty much the way it's motivated. There's no gold for XP. It's literally just kill monsters, get XP. And I think that creates some motivational issues as far as 5e is concerned that I've always had a problem with. It kind of motivates combat a bit too much, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
but then the other way people do it is like the milestones, which I don't know.
But they don't even do that right. They don't do it as far as the book is concerned. Because I remember I read it recently in the 1E DMG, and it's different than the way people explain it now, which is unfortunate. There's like this whole Mandela effect of what milestone leveling is and what it originally was. And it's unfortunate because even WotC has embraced this new definition, I feel like, of what milestone is.
Well, even the new version, like the GM just decides at a certain point to give you a level. That is in the DMG. It just wasn't called milestones yet. It's like literally the chapter beneath, like the milestones chapter. It's like you could always also do it this way. But then somehow over the course of like all these supplements, that became like milestones. So if you read like Curse of Strahd, it explains milestones as that like like the GM will just give you a level at any point of his choosing, and they got rid of the whole XP thing.
Yeah, whereas like I think what milestone was more like in the 5e DMG, if I remember correctly, as it was written in that paragraph, was something more akin to like what I mentioned with Makuhito, which was like give them 500 XP for saving the village. That's a milestone. That's a big thing. So it's experience points. It's funny, giving a level isn't points. So it's just when you call it like even the name in and of itself as it's meant now, where the referee just doles out a level. It's not even points. It's just levels. It's milestone levels. It's not milestone experience points. It's not milestone XP. So
if I remember right, I never looked at it in a while, but if I remember right, they don't even really give examples though. It's just like, give XP for like stuff that happens. It's like, well, give me like some examples. Like that's what I'm trying to figure out for my new project, because it's kind of white box based. So, gold for XP is kind of like, the standard, but that setting doesn't really fully work for that. You can do it, but there's also, I think there should also be other ways to like get XP. So I'm going to have to like come up with like a little list of like, if you do this, like, it's like 3D 6 times 100 XP or whatever. So
Yeah. Rex Teal says 5e was my first TTRPG, but I didn't play it much and lost interest after finding old school D&D. Understandable. And other games. But you guys in Crossface are definitely encouraging me to take another look at 5e. Yeah, I think a lot of people play, honestly, 5e wrong. They've always played it incorrectly.
Yeah.
I think for me, what really changed my mind on 5e was when I ran my Adventures in Middle-earth campaign for my friends. And I just saw how that game ran, and I really, because it was Tolkien, so I really wanted to get it right in how to run that game. And when I played it, I realized like 5e is a fine system. It works just fine, and I think a lot of people hate it, but they can't really give a reason why they hate it. They just hate it because it's all the kids play it. I don't know. But running Adventures in Middle-earth, I was like, man, I was always concerned that this game was too heroic, too whatever. But here it is. It fits Middle-earth. It feels like Middle-earth. It's working really well. And I don't know. It really started getting the gears going in my mind like years ago about what the game could be. And part of it is that WotC mismanaged the system for sure.
Yeah.
But like, what is it? Is Tasha's the first one where everything started?
Yeah, that's kind of like the first. That's the one that started like introducing the whole like you can be of whatever race and have whatever bonuses.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, the 5e player, the original 5e rules probably just need a better consultant working on it. That's all it needed.
You should have done more than send some emails. But yeah, it's like Malachi said, it's mostly the culture that people hate, and then they conflate that with the rest of the game. But I've always been kind of a proponent of 5th edition, if you guys remember, because I came into this hobby like running it, and I always kind of ran it in a more old school way. I did dungeon crawls, I do like hex crawls, I do adventures and stuff. I never really did the whole critical role like story gaming stuff. So I've always been like, hey, you can run 5e just fine, like like this. You don't have to do you don't have to be the Matt Mercer type GM.
Well, I only award XP for role playing. Huzzah!
Yeah.
Tell me what your character is doing.
But only first person role playing.
Yes. My players, when we first got into 5e a few years ago, at the height of its popularity, and we were all playing it, the first encounter with short rest that they had, they all just burst out laughing because it was so retarded to them. Like, they're like, wait a minute. I can just rest for a few hours and regain all of my hit points. Like, yes, you can. And it's like, so there's some stuff about it that's like,
but see,
it sucks.
But see, Adventures in Middle-earth fixes that because there's a way to fix it, and I think even the DMG offers you ways of fixing it as well.
Of course it is.
It's just funny. I feel like a lot of the things that people complain about, like even 5e people, it's just in the DMG and they didn't read it. Like the whole Ginny D thing, like not reading the DMG after 10 years. It's like, that's just insane to me. I don't want to be mean to her at all. She has me blocked on X, whatever. I don't really like her, but what's wild to me is like, how are you giving advice and telling people how to mod their game to solve these problems, but you've never read the guide for doing that? It's so much like what I've seen with a lot of homebrewing, and which is why I'm an advocate for reading the rules, where someone inevitably says, this is a problem, and here's my homebrew to fix it. And it's like, well, yeah, but actually there's a rule for that in the book. You just didn't read it, and it actually solves the problem better than your homebrew, actually. So,
I mean, we always like to pick up, if we're going to pick up a new game, we like to run it basic, raw first. And that's how they encountered the short rest thing. And to me, that means no DMG right at the beginning. no extra books, like strict raw. This is the base game.
Mhm.
And then we can start fixing things and adding, moving things around if it feels like it doesn't fit.
Yeah. But with the whole West thing, like the DMG offers the whole where like a short West is a day and a long West is a week, which I kind of like, but none of my players ever wanted to try it because, and I kind of get this because so much stuff like class wise and like all this stuff is like tied to those Wests. It's like, oh, you only get this back on the short West, you only get this back on the long West, and like if it's like, well, I have to like wait a week, like okay, I do like a punch, like my super punch, and I have to like wait a week to get it back, like that sucks. So I kind of get it, but
It's a fix, I guess. It's not really
Yeah.
tied well into the
yeah,
abilities.
the rest of the
I like the way Adventures in Middle Earth does it, where you can take short rests, and you can roll your hit die that you have and expend them in order to recover, but you're not getting those hit dice back because you can't actually take long rests in the wilderness. And I like that aspect. I think that actually strikes a good balance. You can take a long rest to recover skills, but you're not going to replenish your hit dice. You're not going to replenish your hit points because you're resting in the wilderness. So, okay, some of those skills will reset and everything that you need to have reset, but you're not getting that hit dice, the healing bonus. That I think is probably the biggest problem that you have.
Yeah, because 5e just should have done a better job of like saying that, hey, you can only do a long rest in certain like situations, and they don't really do that. So people just assume that they can just barricade like the door in the dungeon and then just like sleep on the ground for like 8 hours, and then yeah. But that's kind of want to do. If I do that remake of the 5e modern book, I want to like also take a look at the rest system, and I want to do something like that. It's like I want to have like different levels of rest. So it's like, hey, if you're resting like in this dirty apartment on like a mattress with a bullet wound in your stomach, like it's not going to do much. You might be able to get your skills back, but you're not going to heal. If you're resting in a fully stocked hospital, that's a different matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always roll my eyes when I see like these 40-year-old, I've been playing for 40 years type of guys like, oh, 5e sucks. I want to play a system that has henchmen, and I want to play a system that has morale. And I'm like,
it does
it does have that. It's like they don't even know. Like it may or may not be the best. You can always,
but it's there.
Tweak it, but it is there. Yeah,
it's not part of the core system. Is the problem. It's all just afterthought stuff, like optional rules in the back of the book that nobody ever looks at.
Right, exactly.
So Beardy Ben asked the question: What do you all think of Tales of the Valiant? And I haven't even looked at it yet. I'm probably not going to look at it.
Is that the new Critical Role thing?
No, that's the Kobold Press, I think. Is it the Kobold Press? Yeah, Kobold Press 5e.
Oh yeah. No, I saw some of the early like playtest material, and it just looked like, I don't know, it looked like even more overpowered 5e. Like it looked like 5e that was like leaning even more into the whole everything is magical and superpowered thing, and it just didn't really interest me. So
it's not fixing the problems that I have with it,
It's taking 5e and just like turning it to 11, which some people might enjoy that, but I'm not one of those. So
yeah. This is a good point. One time could help the DMG variant rest rule, probably, but you got to have players that are interested in doing that. It's like Vic pointed out. Now they got to wait a day or a week. And now they got to wait like a day or a week in real time, and some players are just not into that.
No, especially the more new school ones.
Good God, the Tales of the Valiant PDF just for the player's guide is $35.
Jeez, I need to like up my prices or something because I'm so cheap.
35 for the PDF? Forget it, man.
I think that's a route of 5e that I'm not interested in going. I'm not interested in experimenting with, because regular 5e already exists. I have my 5e books. If I want to run that hyper-powered high-level thing, I can, no problem. It's easy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that it might do well in the sense of it will be a competition against Wizards of the Coast new version of it. And I think with Wizards of the Coast, using AI. They've already talked about using AI. I think because they fired too many people, and there's no designers left. There's no good designers left at Wizards of the Coast like there was in 2014 with all the big swingers that were actually working on 5e, like Merles and stuff like that actually understood D&D. I think that's going to be a big turnoff. I think that the virtual tabletop, like there's no character sheet in the new 2024 handbook, and so how they clearly what I see that as, and I've seen other YouTubers talk about this. They clearly want to drive you towards D&D Beyond and using a digital character sheet and not using the one. I mean, nothing's stopping you from writing it on a piece of paper, but it's clear they're doing everything they possibly can to make this a miserable experience. So, I think Tales of the Valiant could steal some of those people away, but I don't know. I don't know if it has longevity in it in that regard. It's not offering anything, in my opinion, super unique or interesting that really like doesn't sound like the 2024 books are going to offer, you know.
Let's face it, if you're a game designer, would you even want to work for WotC? I don't know. How much do they pay?
Yeah.
I like money. I'm tired of being poor.
Yeah, if they paid me a lot of money, I would say sure. They would never contact me, though. I'm sure they hate me.
Yeah.
There was a point where I'm pretty sure I had WotC employees on Slack accounts interacting with me in negative ways. So I have no doubt that they hate me. But yeah.
Yeah.
D&D's downfall started when Merles was moved off of it. Yeah, he was the last guy there that kind of knew what he was doing with D&D. I know some people don't like Mike Merles, but he was the last guy that actually cared about D&D and knew what D&D was capable of and what it could do.
Yeah.
And now that he's gone, there's no one left. Like, I don't think Perkins knows what he's doing. I think Perkins is probably a fun GM to play under, or at least he was back in the day. I used to like watching they were always entertaining sometimes parts of it. The Acquisitions Incorporated stuff.
Yeah.
He seemed like he was a fun GM and he knew what he was doing. But I don't think that's one thing I think a lot of GMs don't understand, and why homebrew I think is such a big deal and a problem, is that just because you're a good DM doesn't mean you're a good designer. And the moment you start homebrewing and changing rules, you're entering designer territory and you're no longer a DM. And if you suck at DMing, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Even if they offered me a lot of money, I would tell them no. I don't fit their politics, and quite frankly, you can't trust them as far as you could throw them. That job wouldn't be secure. If it was a freelance position, I wouldn't be bothered by that. If it was something where it's like, this is my job and I work at Wizards of the Coast, now that'd definitely not be secure. But I've worked with different companies and different people that have very different political alignments from me. Some of it has been bad. Some of it has been okay. Mostly because I like money.
Yeah.
This is as far as like illustrations are concerned, not as a designer. Most of my work with a lot of these companies has been as an artist. But I worked with companies that I think if they knew my politics, or my views on things, they probably wouldn't have hired me for freelance work, but they did anyways. So,
they probably know now.
They might know now. It's probably why I haven't heard back from them. But
yeah.
The last time the version of Dean took a nosedive, we got Pathfinder. It wouldn't surprise me if a new 5e clone got popular, and that could be where Tales of the Valiant will rise. It might appeal to that normie power fantasy type of game, but I don't know. I just don't see.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like it plays to any. It doesn't solve the problems of 5e. It sounds like it leans into the things that we would identify as problems.
Yeah.
Which I think is ultimately a game killer.
but if that takes care of like the normies of like the Critical Role fans, whatever, and we can like pick up the crumbs of like the other types of 5e players, like I'll be happy with that.
Well, yeah, well, like I said, like the player in my in-person game, like he was shocked to know how where the hobby was at.
Yeah.
He was shocked to know about the activism even within Wizards of the Coast itself. Like he just was unaware because he's just not online. So I think that there's those people out there. The problem is like, how do you get your stuff in front of those people? Like my buddy was just aware of Wizards of the Coast, and that was about it. He was starting to get his foot in the door and as he was getting more into the hobby, he was starting to like investigate things more. But for him, it was still Wizards of the Coast only. So
yeah, it's like the Pathfinder 3rd edition lifers. Like there's like this weird group of guys that have been playing like 3rd edition Pathfinder for like 20 years, and they don't know about anything else. They don't. They don't care. You be like, hey, 5th edition's out. Oh no, we play Pathfinder. You don't want to check it out? No, we play Pathfinder. It's like, okay.
But I think this is the unique issue with a lot of tabletop role-playing games, and I think this is why Wizards of the Coast version of 5e will probably ultimately fail of their new version, because there are people that are gonna those like that with 5e that are like, but I have my 2014 handbooks and our campaign is still going. Why do I need to upgrade to this new thing? You know? So I think that is ultimately the problem, because the difference I think with this change in editions is that it's not that much, like mechanically it still seems very similar to 2014 5e. It would be roughly compatible. There's probably going to be some discrepancies and problems and differences, but this isn't like going from 3.5 to 4th and then from 4th to 5th, you know, where these games are just not, you can't use these games together. They're not compatible. This is a game where but the thing that got people to switch was that you're offering enough of a new and different system to warrant them wanting to upgrade to the new game. And I mean, we saw this with TSR. I know 2E is well beloved, but 2E never sold as much as 1E. It just didn't. There was people that were just still playing 1E. Like, why play 2E? We still have our 1E books. You know, we're happy. So this is a constant thing, and this is why that macro transaction tabletop thing will not fly unless they somehow get like an AI dungeon master thing, which I think they'd be foolish not to work on. They seem like they would totally do that, but you know, embedded into the this virtual tabletop, essentially running it like a video game.
Yeah. Oh, hey, that weirdo, that Barris guy was trashing Makrohedel apparently.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, he said, I found a copy on top of a recycle bin after a con. I read through it. It was meh. Functional game, pretty amateur and written like an art school dropout. I left it there. Oh yeah. Yeah, that sounds completely plausible.
Hashtag that totally happened. And then everyone clapped. I never sold my stuff at a con, so that's just all nonsense. And it's definitely someone, probably a Swami or someone who likes to use the word foe.
Yeah,
someone who wears his mom's glasses.
Yeah, and is overweight. Because I've never sold my stuff at a con before ever. So. Well, and the fact that people are playing Makrohedel and like it is, I don't know.
Oh, apparently Valmar posted about it originally. He said, I don't know what to do with this now. Completely lost interest in reading it. If you're interested, convince me to send it to you. So I guess Valmar's bot heard about you too.
Well, Valmar came into my replies and was a complete loser and obnoxious, telling me, you got to let it go, man. And it's like, bro, you're still talking about how much your booty hurts from the Bro SR guys. So maybe get the log out of your eye before you get the splinter out of mine. And his excuse was, well, you don't understand. They attacked me. And it's like, okay, yeah. You're weak and pathetic.
Oh, that whole thread is just full of weirdos like shitting on you.
That's fine.
Some guy called Novelgate who has like 17 followers, so totally not a sock puppet.
It's a bunch of people with sock puppets talking to each other. I'm sure.
Come Dungeon RPG, that guy.
Curmudgeon, yeah.
I'm a little blocking this novel gate fool before he comes after me.
Makuhito takes place from the first emperor. I give you a timeline from the first emperor all the way up to just before the Spanish arrive. So you have a large window of, I think it's like 200 or 300 years of their empire where you can play around in it. So. But yeah, that's funny. I made a lot of those people mad, and they can be mad and salty. That's fine. I for Valmar, I thought it was funny how he was just so. That guy only ever appeared in my threads to tell me how much he hated the Bro SR. And there's a lot of guys like that. Like I never interact really with these people ever, but they always show up in my replies to be negative about something, whether it's about me or someone else. And it's like, well, where were you when I was being positive and uplifting over here? Like you only show up in these instances and you never interact with me than any other one. Like I think I was, I think I was talking about timekeeping or something like that. And Valmar appeared in the replies to tell me about like, oh, well, F the bros. They were just a bunch of losers. And if I saw them in real life, I'd kick their teeth in. And it's like,
unlikely.
First of all, yes, unlikely. Second of all, like, where have you been? Where have you been this whole time when I've been talking about positive things, when I've been talking about cool things? Like, these people always appear in your replies. Oh, well, you just need to let it go. You're like obsessed. And it's like, well, bro, I've been talking for like a month about nothing but games. Where were you during those posts interacting with me? You weren't there.
Yeah.
All of a sudden here you come over to concern troll me.
While they spend like every day bitching about the Boazar and stuff. So
yeah, and how much again their booties hurt from being touched by them. It's like, give it a rest. I mean, I know that I have made probably lifelong enemies over the mythical underworld. There's like that noble shield guy. I think to this day, he still feels the touch of my hand on his booty from dealing with him as far as the mythical underworld is concerned. So it's just the way it is. I feel like this hobby is, and this is one of those things, I think, there's always going to probably be someone in the comment section here. Oh, but John, not everyone in the hobby is like this, especially the old guys. But it seems like a lot of the old guys don't really know the game as well as they let on. And I think that that's kind of been a mask off moment over the last few years from the bros, from people like us. You know, like when I started talking about implementing chainmail in 2.0e, I had Griff from Secrets of Blackmoor in my comment section straight up saying, you don't need it. You're not supposed to use it. And I'm like, but dude, I know how to read. And it says in the front of book 1 that you need chainmail. And you start arguing
all these issues.
Yeah, and it solves all of these issues. Like, I know how to read books. I know how to read, unlike a lot of the people in this hobby that just refuse to read. And so I think there's been a big mask off moment as we've sort of drifted away from, there's no wrong way to play, man. Just play how you want. Don't read the rules. Who cares? And I think this kind of ties into the 5e thing. It's always bothered me. And I've mentioned this before. I'm going to mention it again, that they sit and complain about 5e people, for example. Oh, they're so cringe. They don't read their rule books and they just are a bunch of theater kids. And it's like, yeah, but so are you. So are you. Like, you play BX, you play 2nd edition AD&D, you play AD&D 1e in the same way as these 5e people do. Yeah. So it's not even a matter of just like you're better than them. I don't even know what makes you think that you're different from them, other than the fact that you play a different game incorrectly from the 5e people playing the game incorrectly.
Well, we're not woke. Like that's the big difference.
So you're cringe. Like who cares? Like you have nothing of value to offer the conversation on as far as the hobby is concerned. So I think what I'd liken this to is that a lot of these quote unquote veteran players have kind of seen the way a lot of us younger guys are approaching the game, and they don't like it because we're not approaching it through this nostalgia vision. I'm not young enough to have this nostalgia for playing 0e wrong when I was 12 years old, or BX wrong when I was 12 years old, or AD&D wrong when I was 12 years old. I'm literally just picking up the books, reading them. What do they say? Let's run the game. right? And so you invariably come to conclusions that are going to be different from what a lot of these guys have. And I think they see it as a challenge to their wisdom as far as the games are concerned. And this isn't to say that they don't have any wisdom. I'm sure they do. They obviously do. They've ran games for a long time. They probably have something of value to contribute to the conversation that they should lean into. But man, I liken it to like, Grandpa, we got to take the keys away from you because you're going to crash into something at this point. Like, you're too old to be driving right now. You know, we got to take your license away. And I feel that way with a lot of these grogs because they're the way they behave sometimes is kind of unhinged. Not all of them. There's some great ones. I always point out like Calstaff is great. Yo Dano is great. There's a lot of guys out there that I am friendly with and talk to that I have learned a lot from. And they're very kind to me and they answer my questions, especially when I have a rules question and stuff like that. But then there's some that are just like, I don't know. They want to have this like non-game rule zero fiat thing. And they think they're so based and awesome for just not doing it in 5e for some reason. I don't know. That's my rant.
Yeah. Well, somebody said, I'm not going to call him out because I actually like the guy, but they said your posts have soured him on your brand, basically. And it's like another thing I've noticed, like, you've been a terror on Twitter lately, but it hasn't been for no reason. And it's like, where were these people when, like, you, me, like, everyone was getting harassed, we're getting all these nasty messages, all these, like, we're getting, like, literally, in your case, doxxed in real life and, like, harassed and stuff like that. And then the moment you start speaking up and you maybe start throwing some shit back, then all of a sudden you're the bad guy. And, like, I don't like that stuff.
I don't either. And I don't know if I mentioned this on stream, but I'll mention it now. I'm not going to say who I think it was. But I was getting pizzas, notifications of pizzas being sent to my house during a lot of this. So it's been kind of frustrating to get notifications of unpaid pizzas being sent to your house. They were sending it to the wrong address because whoever was doing it was retarded and not very well researched on me. But they were sending it to an old address in California. I don't live in California anymore. And I felt bad for the people that bought my old house. But I was getting emails constantly. I was getting phone calls from like DoorDash drivers about your pizza's here. And it's like, I don't live in California anymore. And so, yeah, the moment I have to put up with that crap. And then the moment I try and swing back a lot of these people, they have like this public school mentality of some, I think John Mollison, Mr. Wargaming sent a meme to someone in reply. It's like, I think it was someone running. It was like the public school administrator running to protect the bully from the victim who decided to hit back. It's like, it's the same thing. It's like, you'd make a really great public school administrator with that mentality. But, yeah.
Oh, shit.
And so, see, that's the big difference for me is like, I'm a big boy. I can take it if somebody leaves a negative review on one of my books and has like reasons, and it's like, I didn't like these few things, it just didn't work out for me. That's annoying to me, but that is to every creator, but I can deal with that. It's the strawman and the ad hominem bullshit and like oh, you said you like orange juice. What do you have against pineapples? It's like that. That's the stupid shit.
It's just also a lot of people that like act like complete assholes to you, and they're just like constantly giving like all these little jabs and just insults and little criticisms and stuff. And then the moment you respond in kind, you're all of a sudden the jerk.
Well, the thing with like Valmar, for instance, that he was saying was like he thought that he could because he purchased my book. He thought that he could come into my replies and talk to me in a very rude manner and a complete douchey manner. And like, oh, well, I support you. So like, I'm allowed to treat you like crap. And it's like, no, buddy, that's not how this works. No. I don't care if you buy my book or not. You treat me like garbage, I'm going to respond to you. All right. I'm going to respond to anyone like that. I don't care if you bought my book or not. That's not how this works. You don't get to buy someone's, like, we talked about this on stream a while back, and someone gave a good example. It's like, imagine there's a sandwich shop and someone walks into the sandwich shop and starts like pissing all over the sneeze glass and starts like taking a dump in on top of one of the tables. And then so you boot them out and they're like, but I'm a paying customer. It's like, no, you're not. Like,
Yeah.
like you may have bought a sandwich here, but I don't want you in here anymore. And it's the same is true with this sort of behavior online. It's like, I'm sorry, you're going to appear in my replies and be absolutely insufferable. Like I'm going to do something about it and I'm going to say something to you.
Yeah.
So,
well, you also don't go out of your way to like randomly attack people. You don't seek out posts that you disagree with and then like jump in to like randomly attack them. Everything you say and do is in response to other people. And after like a year plus of like, having to deal with bullshit. But a lot of people don't realize that. I want to respond to this though. No offense, Ryan, but you also love arguing with people on Twitter and in various discords and stuff. So, maybe follow your own advice in that case. But yeah, I get you. I got you though.
Well, it's very easy for a lot of the people to have this opinion from the sidelines, armchair quarterbacking. It's easy to have that opinion when you don't have as many eyes on you as someone like I don't even have that many eyes on me. My channel just barely broke 5K here.
Yeah,
I'm not even 5K followers on X, but that's still a lot of eyes and a lot of people being critical of you. And so there's a point where it's like with some people, you have to slap them down. That's just the way it is. You have to stick up for yourself. So
yeah.
But yeah, if I soured someone on what I make, like, oh well, sorry. Generally I don't lash out at random people. There's no random targets.
Neither.
So if I offended you or you had a run-in with me, people generally know me as being pretty chill. So if there was an issue, it was probably with you. So
yeah,
you probably said something that was kind of, again, a jerk move, and I responded. I gave you the same energy back that you gave me, and you did the surprise Pikachu.jpg face. So
yeah,
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Like I said, it's just, it just sucks when you have to deal with all this shit for months of a year. And then when you finally lash out, then you're the bad guy. I had that happen too, because, a few months ago, I lashed out on Twitter after a bunch of bullshit. And then people were like in my replies, like lecturing me.
We'll see, like Praxis here. This is the kind of person I'm talking about, which is cool. It's like, as a member of AARP, Association of Advanced Role Players, and a 43-year veteran of AD&D, I find it awesome that you young people are reading the holy tomes and actually playing by the rules. See, it's that simple. And it's one thing for a lot of these old guys to kind of look at what we're doing and experimenting with and being like, you kids, we tried that. You can try and warn me, implementing chainmail, it might not work for you. You might run into some problems. We tried that. But, at the same time, you don't know that either. Maybe you didn't implement chainmail correctly 50 years ago. And so, maybe we see something you didn't. It's entirely possible. It's only for the better to get more eyes on a lot of these rules and experiment with this stuff. So yeah, I appreciate this. I see people all the time in my comment section, sort of, for instance, we talk about zero prep and they're like, oh, well, I like prepping. And it's like, well, good for you, man. That's awesome. I hope your games are great and you have a good time. Like, it's easy to agree to disagree. It's just, you get a lot of some of these guys, like, again, like Griff coming into my comment section and telling me I'm a bad person, essentially, for using chainmail in my Zero E game. I think it's because he hates Gary Gygax, but that's another topic and issue.
Well, I was going to say something, and now I completely, my brain just completely took a dump.
Well, we're getting at the 2-hour mark here, and actually, I'm going to have to leave soon. We're going to a pumpkin patch later, taking my daughter to a pumpkin patch later, to a farm night for her school. But I have this question here. I totally forgot about that. I will repost it. I'll try and remember to do that, hopefully in the coming weeks. I totally forgot about that because I took down my website because it's too expensive. But yeah. Yeah, a lot of my links are messed up. Especially in old videos, I'm not going to go back and fix. I have 200 over 200 videos on my channel. I'm not going back and fixing my old links. Like that's just not going to happen. But yeah, maybe we should start closing it out here. Kind of all over the place this stream, but I think we covered some interesting topics. I think that the future of 5e, to end on this point, for my final point I want to make, I think the future of 5e is going to be in an interesting place. I think the hobby in general is going to be in an interesting place.
Yeah.
And I think there's room for some of us smaller, more agile creators to make some moves that will ultimately, I think, be beneficial for the hobby and for ourselves and for a lot of these editions as well. So I'm excited to see where things go and to get some of my ideas out there. So, yeah.
Real.
Yeah. I want to show my progress real quick. I'm not going to like go slow.
Oh, go for it, yeah.
But so I'm almost done with Modern Necessities. I need to like do some tweaks here and there, and I need to finish the final chapter, like the little adventure that's at the end. But otherwise, it's almost done. You can kind of get an idea of like the general layout I ended up with.
I'm gonna solo it there.
Yeah. So lots of art. I did end up putting in a bunch of stock art because I had a lot of like dead space, just the way the layout ended up. But I pretty much went with like a single artist for that, so it's still pretty uniform.
This is Winnipeg's favorite part of the stream, Vic, just so you know.
Yeah. So yeah, that's like you can see, it's coming along nicely. Need to do some tweaks here and there. Like, I'm not sure if you can see it on the screen, but on this one, there's like the weird like outlines around the images, the embedded images, and I need to figure out how to fix that. I have no idea what's causing that. Where did my thing go? Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's looking good.
Yeah, it's a pretty dense. Actually, put psionics in this version, and that's your succubus.
Yeah,
I put that in the psionics version. I was like, yeah, makes sense, I guess, maybe.
The succubus ethot with an OnlyFans.
Yep. Got mercenaries or with specialists and mercenaries, so basically retainers and stuff. And then actual loot tables, which were a pain to make. I suck at those. There's your Cholo elf. And I just need to do the adventure at the end, and that's it. Somebody's asking, will I have more detailed domain play rules? Not really, because OSZ doesn't really have the detailed domain play rules either. And I'm not a wargamer, so I don't really know that stuff all too well. So, I would probably mess it up.
But that means that you can get Modern Necessities and you can make the domain rule.
Oh yeah. If somebody
maybe run some like street gang factions in a urban environment or something like that.
If somebody wants to write the domain rules for them, they're more than welcome to, and make some money off of them.
Yeah. Greg, you got any final parting thoughts?
No, sir. I don't even have anything to shill. I'm not going to ask you to play my trailer or anything like that. We'll save that for a Titans episode.
Yeah, we'll have to organize that in the future. Get you on to talk about kaiju and mecha. I think that sounds cool. So, and I've seen what you've done so far. Greg, out of all three of us, everyone probably has the best layout. So
yeah, but he doesn't do it himself. He has his chat friend doing it for him. We have to do everything ourselves. He just sits back and has like the Renaissance man do everything for him. So
yeah, I am getting a little burnt out on the sci-fi stuff. Been working on it for so long. I'm anxious to get back to the high fantasy.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll end it here. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed our kind of all over the place stream. We covered a lot of topics, but I mean, we were right about every single one. I'm just saying. I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
We might have been wrong about some things. I don't know. But Vic's like, don't speak for me. I'm always right.
Yeah.
Speaking as an old fogey, keep fighting the good fight, good sirs. Thank you, Mercurius. I always appreciate you. Yes, objectively correct as usual. Hey, you know what though? We try here to have like, I really want to make sure that this channel is one of the few places you can go to actually get really good discussion. Like I'm talking about real in-depth discussion on the hobby, not just like that like smooth brain level 1 normie advice and talking points, but like, we actually talk from experience and from running our games and designing things and playing things and reading things. So
no clickbait. WotC has just killed D&D. Like,
for the 10th time, like.
Yeah.
Oh, I probably have one on my YouTube blurb, channel blurb. I changed it recently, so I'm sure that's probably why that's there. So, I'll go check it out. Oh, thank you, Paladin. You guys are all being generous as we're.
Paladin.
That's Matthew Barninger. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Paladin is based.
Oh,
But
also a quick sneak peek. This is another thing I'm working on. Just a sneak peek for you guys.
Oh,
there you go.
Cool.
Nice, yeah. Arcanum influenced with like 19th century exploration and pulp with magic. Yep. Sounds good to me.
But yeah, we'll I'm hoping next week gonna have the Dungeon Deacon on. We'll talk about cosmology and the Underworld and some other mythical elements. He sent me some notes. We just couldn't connect this week, but hopefully next week. And then we'll have hopefully some other guests lined up in the future.
Yeah, that would be sweet.
Thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.